So one of the channels I pay attention to is called Kings and Generals. They have several other sister channels, um, which cover periods in history. One of the ones is one of the ones that the sister channel does. Talks about the history of the First and Second World Wars. They have now turned to other eras of history, such as the colonial expansionism in the Asia Pacific, and this one was just dropped by Kings and Generals. You should check it out. Imperialism in the East. I believe that's the title. But this, and they do a really good job of it. It doesn't get into the more. For those wondering why I keep repeating stuff, is because for some reason there's a lot of pausing when I'm making these videos. I don't know why. I have some other issues with this phone, so I'm gonna have to, because this is a fairly new phone, I'm gonna have to go find out why the camera stops. Anyways, Kings and Generals, Imperialism in the East. You should check it out. And this goes on to, this is just later on, which brings us into the 20th century, to the which brings us to the 20th century of the First and Second World War. But this is just the imperialism in the East is just an extension of the super imperialism, which started in the newly minted term of the Americas. The colonial expansion and all the atrocities and genocides and everything else, which developed into the ideology of white supremacy, which was just an excuse, a thing created to create division among basically the lower classes, which is all the white settlers and so on and so forth, who had more in common with those whom they basically helped to colonize and to help to exterminate and committing cultural and physical genocide and destruction of societies and cultures, which is still continuing to this day. But one thing I've come to understand in history, the reason why Western European countries could do this is because of the thousands of years of brutal wars between the rulers in Western Europe and Greater Europe. You have the Greeks, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, you name it. The Europeans had, and some of it has ties with the what we know as the Middle East and North Africa with the Muslims. Uh, Basically, this is uh, you know these are largely uh, become a fight of greater European diaspora, which is and a lot of the Middle East and North Africans uh, were very much interconnected with the with what we know as European. Um, there was an interconnectivity. So basically, this is largely a pissing contest of who's the bigger and badder and most war like you know expansionist imperialist and so but then there's before that then you also have the Mongol and the steppe nomad from the east who between the infighting among the steppe people of the east and the incorporation of so-called Turkic and other steppe people, and then the expansion that the Mongols did, which brought about the cultural and military and other and societal aspects. So, what the point I'm trying to make is that the Europeans, the Western Europeans especially, in later historical years, they had a leg up. They've been in constant war and brutalization of each other for dominance. So their motivation created the shipbuilding and weapons systems, which gave them a leg up. Which enabled them to create the sailing warships, the gunboats that they did, the tactics that they used, the weapons that they developed. Although it wasn't primarily their idea, because gunpowder was a Chinese invention. But there's a lot of stuff that the West took from ideas and innovations that they took from elsewhere, and they incorporated. Now, that was something the West was really good at, is they were able to incorporate advances and ideas and turn them into lethal weapons and tactics that could be used for their ambitions. Now, this isn't the Western Europeans or the Europeans, the people itself. It was the rulers, the ones that they're dictators and they're authoritarians, and Westerners have basically had subjected themselves to being easily manipulated by their ruling class, by their upper crust in society, which is a stupid term, because there is no upper crust. Doesn't matter what ethnic groups that you are born in. Thing is that Westerners like to think that that they have this that they can see through things, that they think more clearly, but that's just sheer arrogance and stupidity, because the plain fact of the matter is, Westerners are very subjective. I mean, not subjective. Yeah, they are subjective, but they're also very susceptible to what their ruling class wants to put out. It's not more their culture; it's their ruling elite's culture that they fall for. But that's also something that other societies throughout history have been susceptible to. But while there was a lot of fighting in the East and elsewhere, the thing is Westerners really haven't grown significantly in understanding this. The Chinese and other cultures have learned periodically the lessons. That's something that the Westerners haven't. The Chinese, in particular, learn the value of the lesson that that those who have power will always use it against them, against the majority. They will always want to acquire more lands, more money, more power, more influence, more everything. And but the Chinese aren't the only ones. In a way, I think the Koreans and the Japanese are more, and I'm Korean, by the way, are more in line with in Westerners in the population, that they don't really look back. They don't actually ingest the lessons. They don't remember. They're still the ruling elites still have a very tight control of the thinking. And that's not to say all Koreans and all Japanese, but the majority are easily susceptible to. Wow, I'm having trouble saying certain words. Anyways, you get what I'm trying to say. So, all of that basically ties down to what is taking place today, and right now it's the colonized, and which is basically almost the entirety of the Western. Oh, by the way, Russia can be considered part of the Western world. The Russian Empire, basically a lot of the landmass on the further side of the Russian territory, that was during the period of the Opium Wars, where they took over a large chunk to the very edge where it hits the land hits the seas and oceans. That is especially in the northern part of where you see the map of China today. A lot of that, what was called Manchuria during the during the period leading up to the First and Second World War, and from the aftermath of the Opium Wars, that was basically that was Chinese territory. So the Russians also played a part in the super imperialism of the West, because technically they are Western. Um, the fact that there's been a division among Russians and so-called European West and the Western world as a whole is because largely that was due to the infighting among the European ruling elites. And the let's face it, if you look at the map, Russia is huge. Even before, even after the Soviet period and the breakdown of the Soviet Union, Russia is still massive. Just on a physical map and territory, it is gigantic. Now, that's just on a physical map, not on an economic or population or societal. But it's basically what I'm saying is superficial, and that's what I mean about Europeans. They are very superficial. They can't see beyond the physical, or are unwilling to see beyond the superficial. And large part of that has to do with indoctrination and propaganda. And where does indoctrination and propaganda comes from in any society? It comes from the ruling elites and the susceptibility of the populations to push back on that, to think, be able to think clearly, to take the lessons, and but again, the dynamic of there has been for thousands of years constant warring that attributed, wars have all these atrocities. So PTSD definitely has an aspect, and PTSD often makes us deny realities that we see in our own individual lives, and that denial turns into this hopium, this wishful thinking, this hoping that those traumas won't happen again, and we're so traumatized that we want to deny it can happen again. So therefore, we want to mitigate at all costs, and that makes us more susceptible to the ruling elites' narratives and agendas. And we get to the point where we're so dysfunctional and so adverse that the superficial markers for strength and power is what crowds us, and all of our ethics and values, such as community, love of community, love of people, love of family. We use all these values, but we basically come to the point where that sort of only applies only applies in an insular way, and there are many levels of insular acceptance, and that is the immediate, the somewhat greater community, but even in there are specific go zones, and then the even greater And that's built on this whole concept of Western culture. And so this all distorts and devalues our ethics. And when you have centuries, to thousands of centuries, from centuries to thousands of years, you come to have not a consistent ethical ethical morality. It becomes subjective, an insularly subjective concept of values. And that is what I call insanity. When there is no consistency, when it becomes subjective. And so I think a lot of people get confused about what subjective and objective is. Subjective is that insular groupthink. Rather than the objective groupthink. Objective meaning that, if you would not want, if it's not acceptable for you in your insular immediate circles and the greater community insular circles, then it should not be. And if it's done to others, and you would look at it as negative, discounting the shape of the eyes, the color of the skin, and whether you're a girl or a boy or a female or a male or a woman or man, then that's what I mean. It's like there's a lot of times, and some people think, well, because they're for women's rights, or they're for this, or they're for that. Or, it's like, but at the same time, they can't see when there's an attack on that area, and yet they still make arguments and not being able to be consistent. Gender superiority, racial superiority, ethnic superiority, religious, they're all things we should be consistently against. Why? Because it has a greater impact on the objective whole. And it always has a negative effect on the greater whole. And the greater whole should include the very natural world around us. That is where consistency in ethical morality should be based on. And we should all objectively, collectively be against it. Why? Because when we are objectively and collectively against it, we are preserving our own self-preservation. We are investing in our own personal safety and security and prosperity, because we are consistently with the objective whole and not with subjective. Subjective is always negative, always. There is no such thing as a good white lie. And a lot of you will think that's contrary. But there is no such thing as a good white lie. Lies lie with us personally. When we lie to ourselves, we are being subjective and therefore impacting ourselves individually negatively. This is where the Confucius thought of being brutally honest is the best path. Because if we lie to ourselves and we can use these white lies saying, oh, you're not, when somebody asks, do I look bad? We should be honest. And it starts with ourselves. Because if we can't be honest with ourselves, and we can't be honest with our so-called friends and family and so on and so forth, then we don't know. Then individually we can't be objective. We can't. We lose the ability to think and see clearly, and that's where we develop these subjective ideas of what's negative, what's bad. And this builds up insecurities. And insecurities are something that's based on subjective terms, subjective ideas. I have a small penis, but it's like that's a purely physical thing. There's more to me than the size of my dick. That's something I accepted. There's also that stereotypical nonsense that all Asians have small dicks, which is not true at all. But that's really something that doesn't matter to me. I've accepted that truth. It doesn't make me. It doesn't make me evil. It doesn't make me lesser. And there was nothing I can do about it. And even if I could, I'm just like, why? Why spend the money? What will it change? Nothing. Is it going to make me richer? Is it going to make me suddenly become more virile? No. That's all subjective nonsense. It's all damaging to your psychological and emotional. And that's what brings about levels of insanity, societal insanity. This is something I understood when I was in my mid to late teens. I don't. I accepted there's some. It's like that's a purely physical nonsense stuff. It shouldn't really matter. So this is where I'm getting at. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to accept. And otherwise, we end up getting these subjective nonsense and so on and so forth. And plus, trust me, when I say that I still have a lot of subjective stuff that I'm still trying to beat down, that I'm still trying to get balance with. But that's the thing. Are you making an effort to be honest with yourself? Because when you're honest with yourself, you're going to be honest with others. This is not to say that I'm honest constantly, because there's subjective cultural and societal nonsense that it's difficult. But I'm conscious of it. I'm constantly trying to fix within myself. So, I guess I kind of went off on a tangent, and I probably lost a lot of people. But if you were following me and you were listening and you were really paying attention, hopefully you got the overall message I was trying to put out there. All right, that's the end of the video. But and do check out the Kings and Generals imperialism of the East, or something like that. Just look it up. All right, thanks. Bye.